Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Humanity Podcast. Be a little bit quieter in this one. Um, but today we're looking at Neanderthals, and Neanderthals are very interesting. I don't think they're as interesting as Homo erectus, but that's just like personal opinion. Ah, I don't know. I I didn't know much about Homo erectus honestly before I did, or Homo Neanderthal before I did this. I knew more about Homo erectus because I don't know. Not as many people talk about Homo erectus, or sorry, Neanderthals, but there's still like a large amount of people who talk about Neanderthals. But anyway, um, they stayed in Europe. Sorry, mainly in Europe, and they lived for about 300,000 years, and you may think, well, Homo erectus survived for 2.4 million. What's going on? It was during the Ice Age, and we'll get on to what I think caused their death, but there's plenty of different reasons that, you know, I wouldn't find it hard to believe that their death was caused by this. But moving on, they were massive. Okay, so since it was cold, they were pretty big. They had massive lungs to pump air through their body. Um, and they usually would wear tons of clothing articles that they would make out of mammoth skin, deer hide, just whatever they could get their hands on. They would try and find warmth with, because while they could still make fire, you can't constantly be near fire, especially if you're hunting. And they would have these very advanced hunting strategies, by the way. They made their tools out of flint rather than rock, which Homo erectus did use flint, but I think they pounded out river stones mostly. But they made flakes of flint, and they used that flint to make arrows. But you remember in the last episode, they were making these very refined tools. They didn't. I keep saying I always say I keep saying something in every episode, but they were making not refined tools anymore. They didn't care that much anymore. They just wanted something that could kill and get them out of it, you know. So, like, to go further on their excellent hunting, they would plan out exactly where the herds would be of mammoth or deer or bison. They would plan out where they would be, and then they would trap them into a canyon, which is already incredible. They had a concept of time, clearly, which, of course, I think Homo erectus and even Australopithecus did. But they were capable of knowing a general vicinity of where these herds would be, which means they had to have some kind of language. Last time I said Homo erectus, I'm sure they had a complex series of grunts, but I think Neanderthals had an actual built language, not similar to ours in any way, shape, or form. Well, I shouldn't say that. Like, I'm thinking of wording. They had language that definitely wasn't advanced like ours, but it had to lead into some language, and then languages just diverted off until then. I'm regathering my thoughts. We also say that all these early species were nomad. Wait, I skipped ahead. They butchered these animals. Another thing is somebody would have to somewhat teach them this. I think they could get it from just visual learning, but they had to be able to tell them, okay, you need to cut here, you need to get as much fat content as possible out of this animal. But as I mentioned before, they stayed where the animals were, and they mapped out where they would be and all that stuff. So that means while they were nomadic, they still stayed in a general area. And in that general area, they would map out things. So every once in a while, somebody would go and get flint from a flint deposit that they were familiar with. Somebody would go to where the animals were. You know, just wherever everything was, it would stay there in that relative area unless they really had to move. And this also leads us to they would meet up with other Neanderthals. And that is very important because that shows they all had a similar language. It wasn't like these groups would, have all these separate languages, because they would meet up and they would exchange information, materials, and even women. What? But that's how they didn't have incest, basically. I don't think they saw it as that at the time, but basically, if they breed with the same people for too long, problems. But they basically just exchanged whatever, and they probably did some rituals, did some maybe music, who knows. But leading us on to the staying in one area thing, what is legendary? We found multiple caves with evidence of Neanderthals working together, building something. Now, was it shelter that they stayed in for a long time? No. But we have found places where these stalactites that we predict were broken off, 100,000 plus years ago, I believe, were broken off and formed into a circle. Maybe they used it to say these kind of things go here, and this kind of things go here. But I seriously doubt that, because we would have found bones, we would have found something showing that they stored stuff there. So I genuinely think it was just people having fun and forming these stalactites, or no, stalagmites. Sorry, they broke them off the floor. These stalagmites, and forming them into a circle just because they could. With that being said, towards the end of Homo Neanderthals' life, they started to meet other Homo sapiens, and that's the only time, I believe, that's the only time there's been another species of human roaming the world with us, and that's pretty cool. Sorry, I'm gathering my thoughts. They would, they could talk to each other, and, they were very similar, but still, you could tell at first glance they were pretty different. They, bigger noses to breathe in more oxygen were on Homo Neanderthals, just larger in general, bigger bone structure, just things that you would need to keep you warm. And Homo sapien kept a lot of those, but face shape was very different, just overall build. It's still efficient for keeping somebody warm, but not as efficient as Homo Neanderthals. And that is because 40,000 years ago, the Ice Age started to end. Actually, more like 45,000 or somewhere in that period. The Ice Age started to end. And this is why I think they went extinct, is because they could not, their bodies were not built for anything but the cold, and they couldn't take, weather you would find in, Oklahoma, somewhere random. They couldn't take that weather, so they would have to stay in colder places. But since the two were still so similar, some people still have 2% Neanderthal in them, and that is really cool. To the point where we're so similar. But anyway, that means we were also working together, and some families may have had, there's 2 or 3 families within each group of Neanderthals, and it could have been like one family Neanderthal, one family Homo sapien. It's really cool. And anyway, let's go. What would life be like if the Neanderthals were still around? Because they could have been if they migrated to somewhere colder, and there's also other reasons that they could have went extinct, such as competing with Homo sapien, which that might be unlikely. Who knows? What's interbreeding? But I think climate change is most likely. You can probably find like 20, 30 reasons, maybe even 100 if you stretched, that Homo Neanderthal could have went extinct. But is their extinction for the better is an important question, because there are 2 outcomes of them, still being alive today. There could have been like slavery and of Neanderthals or Homo sapiens, probably Neanderthals, but who knows? Could have went either way around. But since the lack of population of Neanderthals compared to Homo sapiens at points, But anyway, there could have been race wars. More like species wars. And then the other way is there could have been more acceptance overall of different kinds of people, because there's so much diversity, with 2 entirely different species of human. But something to ask yourself: what do you think would happen if Neanderthals were still around? Personally, I'm going for the prior option, that there would be wars and things, just because it is in nature of every animal. If there's something different, they're different, So, that's why there's racism and all that, and homophobia and transphobia. That is because instincts of animals basically say they are different. It's horrible, but I think that's what would happen. But there's also the chance, the second option, less hate, because there's more diversity, and people would be overall more accepting for more amount of time. And ask yourself, what do you think happened to Homo Neanderthal, and what do you think would happen if they're still alive? We find Homo erectus as recent as 100,000 years ago, and that means, wait a minute, yeah, that means Homo erectus and Homo Neanderthals lived at the same time. I said that differently at the start, but yeah. Did they ever meet? Who knows? However, ask yourself, review if you're on Spotify, like and subscribe and comment if you're on YouTube. I don't care, I'm not your dad, you don't have to do that. Yeah, bye-bye.